Good afternoon and welcome to episode 19 of Will You Review My CV? I'm your host, Alan Wozni, and today I'm highlighting two career advice submissions I made on LinkedIn one was in June 2019, just over 2 years ago, and the second one was recently in May of this year. One individual is a healthcare professional based out of New York City, and the second individual is an education professional based out of Greenboro, North Carolina. You will notice that from today's episode, you'll notice there are significant differences between the submissions I made in 2019 and those in the past few months. First of all, I no longer outline the job recruitment sites such as ZipRecruiter, Fairy Godboss, or Avra Talent. What I've come to understand is that LinkedIn represents more of a last resort for an individual in their job search after probably exhausting all of their job search efforts via online recruiting sites, responding to job postings, and or reaching out to contacts in their network. Second, I no longer outline the steps on how to use the free services on LinkedIn to reach out to new contacts. It's my view that there are plenty of resources available these days to teach people how to use the free resources available on LinkedIn or any other sources out there. To reach out to a new contact on LinkedIn, you do not need to pay the $30 per month for the LinkedIn Premium career group to send connection requests. In fact, the personalized message is more personal than receiving a LinkedIn email, which, in my view, is very similar to receiving a cold email or the standardized greeting when people just click connect when they view your profile on LinkedIn. Just think about it. Which has more personal feel? Hi, Eleanor. I'd like to join your LinkedIn network. Or, hi, Alan. I noticed your recent post summarizing episode 313 of the Calgary Business Podcast. I would like to connect with you here on LinkedIn to learn more about your work. So the first one was the standard reply to LinkedIn, and the second one's using the personalized invitation request on LinkedIn. Finally, virtually all of the intended recipients of my career advice that I make through posts on LinkedIn influencers, they don't respond. I rarely get so much as a like on my comments. No, that doesn't bother me. I understand people. There's a million people or plus million plus people that are following those LinkedIn influencers. The challenge is that the effort required on my part to compile such information. Now, again, I don't mind doing it because it's fun. It's actually fun, the research. But I want to add as much value as possible to the job seekers. And although I know that there are others that see the advice I provide, I don't think my responses get sufficient traction. This is where I think the LinkedIn Premium Career Group can be very useful to job seekers. It's my view that job seekers use this service. The ones that use that service are much more serious about their job search, and accordingly, there's a higher response rate to my posts. And some even actually reach out to me after they connect with me. After I make those submissions on the LinkedIn Career Group, they reach out to me afterwards on LinkedIn. At least that's my impression. From the 100 or so, I literally from March of this year, March 31st to 31st of May, so over just 2 months, when I completed approximately 100 plus submissions in that period, and that's the impression I get, that the more people are very responsive from the LinkedIn Premium Career Group. But I have no official statistics from LinkedIn. All right, I'm going to jump right in, go to my PowerPoint presentation, and to compare the two individuals, the job search submissions I made. So let's share the screen. Find my Okay. And let's go play from start. Okay. So this is episode 19. Today's date, 31st of July. Career advice number 198. Nisha Nelson from, she's a healthcare expert out of New York City. And then career advice number 399. Maria Yandel. She's an education specialist out of North Carolina. So Nisha, back on 8th of June in 2019, Nisha had submitted, so if I get her name wrong, I'm sorry, Nisha, if it's Nisha, you had submitted your comments through LinkedIn influencer Bridget Hyacinth. I'm struggling with job search for a while now. I've had my resume revamped. I continue to network, and I still have been invaluable experience, but I'm not giving up. She probably was saying that it wasn't a valuable experience for her to go through this job search. Thank you for the inspiration, Bridget. I just want to remind everyone, Bridget Hyacinth, she has, back in 2019, she had about 1.5 million followers. Today, she's got well over 3 million. Bridget, you do a wonderful thing for this space. You write books, you do a YouTube channel, and inspiration and connecting people. And I can't take away from that. I'm here to, I really, you don't have the time, and most people don't have the time to drill down like this now. So Nisha, if you're watching this, let's go back. Let's summarize what we did in 2019. I wanted to give perspective to Nisha, and for me, you have done a wonderful job of upgrading your skills. You've got a master of public health, you have a master of science in health education, and you have a bachelor's degree in science in public health with honors. It's noted on your LinkedIn profile. You also gone out and got online certifications, a number of them. COVID-19 contact tracing was one of the ones that stood out, and 5 others. Terrific. Hats off to you. I've said this before. Those kind of things are impressive to me. I'm not recruiting you, but I think they'll stand out and help you stand out from other candidates. You're now working as a COVID-19 case investigator and other health roles since 2019. Hats off to you. Congratulations. And prior to that, 14 plus years of healthcare professional. You've got the credentials on the education side, and your experience, your practical experience, those stack. In my view, that stacks up, and I think that it's a testimony to where you are today. What did I say back then? My credentials. I didn't do this very often, but for the healthcare side, I started with healthcare back into October. My exposure to healthcare started with 2 companies. One was Corizon in a UK health startup. I started with it in September to October 2019. Did investor relations role with them, and then I went into Digifarm for a much more extensive. And I said I gave that background that I had been working as investor relations advisor from November 18 to June 2019. So to give the perspective, I've been looking at that healthcare space for a while, particularly funding in healthcare, life sciences, and bioscience funding. So I made that clear why I'm doing this, why I'm suited, but that how it's relevant for Nisha in her job search. So VC, the two trends I found at that time, and I think it's very consistent today, but this is back in June 2019. VC funding. VC funding was way before COVID, was for very innovative biotech, life sciences, health tech companies. But the second trend I noticed is the VC professionals. They tend to hire the managing directors, the investment professionals. They're represented by medical doctors, PhDs, physicians, pharma experts to allow the money people to make more informed investment decisions. Now, I saw this trend way back when I was working with Ernst & Young in Kazakhstan, and Chase Manhattan Bank sent a banker to Kazakhstan to review the mining steel company that Mittal Steel had purchased way back in 1997. So there's a trend I saw. I didn't really put into perspective, but that's a very similar trend that the money people want tech experts or detailed experts to help advise them. Okay. So what else did I gave Nisha? I went through some of the recruiting and job search links. Enzyme Health, they are a clinical telehealth job site. Landed and Fairy Godboss, both are women focused career sites or recruiting sites. And then CareerR, Convey IQ, Zippia, Avra, Smart Recruiters. Those are some of the examples I gave back in June 2019. And then AngelList. I've said this before, and I'll continue saying AngelList is a wonderful source because it's got startups in there. So if you go into the healthcare startups, Nisha, with your 14 years of experience, 14 plus now, yeah, those startups could use someone like you. And they're a little higher risk. I get it. Startups are higher risk. But if they get funding later on, you could add a lot of value and participate in that upside. But let's look at an AngelList in New York. They had 2,781 roles then. Now it's up to 3,364. New York City, back then, New York City had 2,565 open roles. That's all across the different companies and functional. Now that's up to 2,700 plus roles. So COVID has definitely had an impact on a lot of startups, and the numbers went down last year. They're back up, and congratulate New York State startups who feel confident and are posting roles on AngelList. But drill down a little bit further, and I gave some color or clarity. The search algorithm, you type in the word healthcare, there are 182 roles across in the New York AngelList in New York. Now there are 284. Not surprising. More people with COVID and so forth and helping others deal with the pandemic. There's a lot more startups in that space. Type in the word health and wellness, you get 110. Back then there was 110, now there's 158. So that's a considerable increase for both of those. Life sciences it's not a category anymore, but biotech came up with 25 open roles, and then digital health, it comes up as the health information technology. There are now 87 open roles. So the numbers are significantly higher now in the healthcare space. Not surprising because of COVID, but AngelList, very good source. And back to my my experience working with Horizon and Digifarm, I'd spend a lot of time looking at venture capital companies, and as investor relations, I was reaching out to a lot of potential investors in the healthcare, the venture capital companies that are focused on the healthcare space. So back then, 2019, I lumped them between New York, Boston, and San Francisco. There's a lot across the states, across the U.S., not just in those three cities, but they were predominant back in 2019, at least what I found. So New York City, Eric's Bioscience, Aisling Capital Management, Deerfield Management, OrbiMed Healthcare Fund. OrbiMed, I think they originated in New York, but they're also in China. Healthcare doesn't, the innovation in healthcare space isn't just the U.S. and certainly isn't just New York, Boston, and San Francisco, but it's across Europe is quite robust as well. But OrbiMed, I noticed they have an office, I think in London, Shanghai, and in New York. And then Signet Healthcare Partners. So they're kind of New York based. Boston, there's a ton of names that come up at the 5 or 6 that I gave. Atlas Ventures. And these names come up frequently. I mean, I don't have a formal study, but if you look, you see funding announcements for life sciences, biosciences, these names will come up repeatedly. BioStar Capital, Novartis Venture Fund. Novartis is the healthcare pharmaceutical company. Oak HCFT, that's healthcare and fintech. They get in both. And then Remedios Ventures. San Francisco, BVF Partners, Astellas Ventures, Pivotal BioVentures, Healthy Ventures, and the Morgenthaler Ventures. One thing to say about before I go into the innovation healthcare is their portfolio companies. There's a significant, I still say this, I always say this, is that portfolio companies represent the biggest opportunity for jobs, maybe posted or unposted jobs. There's a company called Loretta Hippo out of New York, is venture capital. They I don't think they're into healthcare, but they're in general the space. and they list in the weekly newsletter, they list open roles across their portfolio. Recently, it's been well over 3,000. During the pandemic, early pandemic, their roles had dropped to about 2,000. They're back up to now 3,800, I think, last week. That's just a one venture capital firm. I don't know if you take this. I can't imagine they all have 2,800 open roles across their portfolios or 2,000, 3,000 open roles. But I can imagine there's probably a fair good number of below, if you drill down, the research students and analysts and healthcare professionals that their portfolio could use, and maybe they're not advertising it on the normal channels, or they just don't have the time and the resources to dedicate to filling all those roles. So huge opportunity. Healthcare innovation. So I gave Nisha some examples of, this is not a complete list. This is what I see, and I create lists based on what I see out there and what I think may be important to others. So I took the healthcare SaaS, or the healthcare innovation that I saw, lumped it between SaaS, software as a service, AI or ML, or artificial intelligence, machine learning, so startups that are focused on that, and then just specialty other. The first one is notable, and it's very notable because they come up. I see them from time to time, but I listened to the podcast of the notable CEO about 2-3 years ago, and it's just literally when you show up, and it shows you show up at the physician for your physician visit, rather than the big clipboard. Hi, welcome. Can you fill this out? It's automatic, and you get a push notification on your app, on your phone, and the doctor, it's literally the doctor spends less time inputting and more time face to face. So that was a notable feature of the notable software. Bridge connector. They allow integrating of systems of if you go from one doctor to another. Cyrus MD. Chat first virtual care, very important during COVID, of course, to be able to chat with your doctor remotely. Doctolib, schedule doctor visits. It's a French based. It's the website is all in French, and I couldn't find the English version, but again, that's important in the global world. Redox, connect, reduce product. Products, medical devices, and so forth. And the Redox brings that to providers. Gives you a space so the healthcare providers can get access to the different products. And then the AI, the innovation in this space is kind of cool. Cuventus. I looked at their website. They have an AI to predict patient patterns in the hospital. It's really cool. And so you can use that for staffing, allocate staffing, predict when the staffing levels will be high, the relevant care, whether you need certain areas of the hospital open. Really cool website or service. LeanTask, AI-driven platform for hospitals. It's if you've got a hospital facility or care facility. Narrative DX, AI for patient experience. It's now it's called Press Gamey. So I guess they've been bought out since then. And then Suki. Suki's kind of cool. AI voice-enabled doctor assistant. So kind of using Alexa. I can't say Alexa too loud because she's in the kitchen. But Siri or Google Home devices. So it's pretty cool. And then the last category, I only have two. Labster, virtual STEM, allowing using the VR headsets, virtual reality to test chemicals in a lab without actually being in the lab. And then Everly Well, in-home health test. So you can do the test yourself, buy the kit. I think you can get the kit delivered from their website, and then you do the home care kit. Probably good for COVID if you're doing the health test at home. So Nisha's working. That summarized my advice to her back in May 2019. What would I giving her? She had the words, my resume revamped. I've said this to people before, and why I started this. Will you review my CV? Because it's hard to compete with the machine learning, the algorithms out there that the major companies have to review your CV and get, or your resume, and get it all done, appropriately. She revamped it. Looking back, a lot of my advice talks about what you can do in the future. So whatever changes you make to your resume, you're fighting against the machine, and I mean the real machine, the ATS, or I think it's called ATS, where it just uses the AI algorithm to pick keywords. But there are a lot of free resources out there if you want to know in the future. Free resource templates, Canva. I use Canva for my social media posts, but they have PowerPoints and other templates that are really, really terrific. So Canva is good for that. And for the if you're looking for a CV template or a resume template, ResuMonk, resume and cover letters kind of templates in there. These are just three. I mean, there's plenty. There's probably thousands or 100 resources out there. And then UPenn, the University of Pennsylvania, has a career services and they have a lot of samples for different degrees and disciplines. So not just healthcare, not just engineering, but you really drill down. It's pretty cool. The sources there, and then free resume reviews. If you go to LinkedIn and you type in free resume or resume review, you get 285 results global. USA, there's 153. And I picked up a couple. Skill Roads, they've got 2,000 followers. Resume Seeding has got 2,000 followers. And then ACP, I forgot what it stands for, but it's for veterans. And it's that resources for job search, 28,000 followers. Probably not a bad resource. And then there's the next one is the ladders. If you go to their website, it's the 30. It says if you type in your resume details, they guarantee a 35-second response. I don't know how detailed that is. Probably using AI. And resume worded, AI powered. Again, this is for your resume review. So they spit it back quickly, give you some key pointers, and then they funnel to a person, maybe a phone call, and you get a chat, a 30-minute free chat with somebody. That's the resources that are available. There's plenty out there. I think Google can help as well. Other things I would do, I would add, she wrote the words, I'm networking, networking, networking. You know, job search is difficult for anybody. And networking, as soon as you exhaust your network, I think, it's the interview process. So what can help that is when you get to the interview. Eric Kramer has written an amazing book called Active Interviewing. It takes a sales approach to job interview, selling your benefits to benefits of buying your services. So I think of Nisha with your 14 years of experience. I think you have a lot of stories to share. If you take an active interviewing approach as opposed to being defensive and waiting for questions to come, I think you can be very successful in your next job if you get to that point. Maybe you won't have to, but just Google the words related around interviewing. There are millions of available resources online. I typed in the words interviewing, 7.3 billion. That's the results that come back. Interview questions, 10.2 billion. Interview answers, 12.2 billion. And then the dreaded interview weaknesses, or what are your weaknesses? It's a little more manageable at 411 million. Now, because Nisha's into healthcare, I picked up a few of the healthcare focused podcasts I've done over the last year or two. And actually, these three, Cherry Health, Numi Health, and My Normative, were all done in 2021. Cherry Health, very recent, and their app is for doctors, newly graduate doctors, medical professional, MDs, who the thing in Canada is called the locum network. I don't know if that exists in the US, but it's very fragmented, very difficult for doctors to get matched into the clinics. And so if they're not working for a permanent hospital, they're freelancing. They're like the gig economy. And so Jordan, sorry, Jordan, if I get your last name wrong, but the Cherry Health team, I should have noted here the numbers, but the Cherry Health team has literally got this app to help coordinate that. And it's really the locum network to help doctors. And he said, Jordan was saying during COVID hit, suddenly I couldn't get those gigs. Suddenly I was getting, like a teacher, part-time teacher, I was getting these gigs to different clinics, and suddenly I couldn't go because the people canceled their vacations and they no longer needed this short-term or part-time doctor. Numi Health, basically again started because of the pandemic, and they're helping with COVID testing and getting booking testings up at the airport too. It's kind of innovative. And then My Normative is Danica Kelly and her partner. It's a women's focused app and just around women's issues. And that, again, started just before pre-COVID, and so taking a very women's focused on women's health, very focused health app. The one other thing I wanted to point out for Nisha, and this is the coolest thing I've heard in a long time, was the Google Chief Health Officer was on a master. I've listened to Master Scales for the last couple of years, the Masters of Scale podcast, and the Google Chief Health Officer came on, and it was pretty cool. It was amazing to hear for her background working for, I think, the New Orleans Health Organization, or the New Orleans and the Louisiana Health Authority, but that was her background, and she was hired just before COVID. So pretty much her career with Google Health has been the COVID period. But she's saying, we hire former FDA commissioners, the Food and Drug Administration, clinical trial experts, physicians that are AI scientists, nurses that led health systems. So it's pretty cool to hear that podcast. And I thought this would be relevant because I think it would help you just to listen to what's happening out there. Gary Vaynerchuk, I gave her, recommendations. I would do that. I didn't do it back then. Crushing it, tell stories of entrepreneurs. There's no reason she couldn't go and be, and go to some of those startups and get, like the Google Health thing. It's a new thing. Probably didn't exist 20 years ago, 2015, 2010, 5 years ago. That Google Health, that kind of stuff, finding that innovation, crushing it. It's about ideas, entrepreneurs, and maybe at some point, Nisha, you'll go into your own business. And then the high school party concept, I wanted to bring that in because I think with her experience, pre-COVID, COVID, and then now this post-COVID period, the high school party concept is, just for anyone who doesn't know, it's for the social person back in high school, back in grade 10, and you were low on the social scale, maybe a D, weren't very popular. The person who hosted the party could go up from a D to a B or an A on the social scale. So it's take that concept into the business side, invite people to Clubhouse, create a Clubhouse channel, Facebook Live, podcast, YouTube, invite people, health professionals, become that social hosting the party, and invite health professionals, doctors, nurses, paramedics, administrators to speak about their COVID-19, pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID periods. And that, over 6 to 18 months, 6, 12, 18 months, you're suddenly the life of the party. It's not the real party. I'm talking about the person that people talk about, the thought leader. So that's the Nisha, I think you're in a very important space. Healthcare is very important. So you're networking, you would expand your network by bringing in people to your channel, but it takes time. These things take time. Let's switch now to Maria Yandel. This is 2 months ago, May 11th of this year. I went into the premium career group and I spent 2 full months because I was pumped. I wanted to share what I've learned over the last 2 to 3 years. And, I found the career LinkedIn career, there's probably 1.5 million to 2 million active users in there at any given point. And as I said earlier, I think LinkedIn premium career group, people are more serious about their job search. And you see that any candidate searching for a job, it's stressful. I don't care how 14, 15, 20 years experience, new grad, it's serious for anybody. And don't take away from anybody who's on the LinkedIn and who's out there job searching. This is a paid service. You cannot go in there without paying the $30 a month or whatever the premium is. So I spent 2 months in there. I did 100 plus submissions, and Maria stuck out because it's the education and for many reasons. So you'll see as we go into this. Hello, everyone. I'm looking to transition out of the classroom. I've taught for 8 years, face-to-face and virtual. I am a huge proponent of EdTech and would love to move into something more in that field. I've completed a 2-year tech master professional development and have a Canvas advanced. I don't know Canvas. I thought it was Canva, but it's not. She's got advanced user certificate. I am the point person on my campus for Canvas and have facilitated district-wide trainings on technology integration. She's asking, should I get a master's in instructional technology? You're going to see. She already has a master's. She has a master's in teaching. You know, become a tech master in her profession. If recruiters are asking her to get the master's in the instructional training, I think she can, there's probably some things she can do to avoid going back into the classroom and continue on. Maybe she can take, I don't know, I didn't even think of that, but maybe she can do some night classes or get some certificates from different sources. But let's do a deep dive now. So Maria, you're, you impress me like Nisha did, because you have the credentials. You have the credentials to be in the classroom. You have the credentials to teach people and to learn the ed tech side and be the professional. You've got a bachelor degree, music and French, which you got 2012. You have a master's in teaching. Master, it's not masters, I think it has to be master in teaching. French language. You've gone and taken, you've got certificates, you've gone and done the Canvas, you're the virtual, the teacher, the guru that people go to, you're the go-to person on campus. Creating that awareness, letting people know about that. That's more important than going out and getting another certificate, which could, by the time you get it, could be, might not be as might not be as worthwhile once you're done your degree. You've got it. You've been a university lecturer since 2016, and you've been a French teacher since 2013. In my view, you've got plenty of credentials to take you to the next level. So from that basis, what did I say? Because you're French, because your French language and your skills there, I recommended the Duolingo founder listening to the podcast from June of 2020. Pretty cool. But one thing they did that was really stood out relevant to you is they crowdsourced to get users to upload their course content for uncommon languages. I mean, you've got the French, German, English, Spanish, getting content up there for the different users. But when you get into very dialects or smaller languages, smaller countries with very few people and inhabitants, it's become important. They don't have the resources. So he said, look, I just say, you want that on, create the course and upload it. So that was very successful for them. And Gary Vaynerchuk, find ways to create awareness of your skills, your teaching skills. Seek ways to become the ed tech instructor without having to go get your master's degree. I mean, you could do it at night, do it in parallel. I'm not saying you shouldn't get it, but if it's the only thing keeping you, if from people using you, create awareness of it, of your skills as a teacher instructor, that's more valuable, because teaching and doing versus certificates if you're not out there teaching. But Gary Vaynerchuk could give you some ideas on how to help that. The Crushing It book, it's 8 hours of just pure dialogue of entrepreneurs. And in there is Dr. Chitra Durgam. She's in somewhere in New Jersey, and she did a musically video. She's the cool dentist video. I mean, a dentist showing others how to floss their teeth. That created awareness. So should she be dancing on TikTok? No, she was educating kids on how to. Musically is the precursor to TikTok, but it was really just showing them how to floss in a fun manner. And then the Nashville strategy sessions from May 2019, because it's kind of in your proximity, but there's some very useful content in there, because Gary met with business owners in Nashville. And the title of the series was called What a Modern Day Business Education Looks Like. So just creating awareness, some really, really practical advice for small businesses. So practical advice for someone instructing and training, trying to to get in that field. Back to the high school party concept, Clubhouse chat room. I mentioned it earlier with Nisha. I'll go over it later. I won't repeat it again here. But this is some of the advice I gave to her back in May. And then the corporate trainer, train the trainer. There's a lot of new startups out there that are giving the tools, so people like you, Maria, can actually make your job better as a trainer, or if you want to be an ed tech specialist or instructor on how to use different ed tech. You're going to see there's I've got a few examples coming up, but the ed tech innovation is like the healthcare. There's a ton of innovation. It's constantly innovation. People are always innovating in this space. But some tools, retool, re-educate the workforce. These are companies out there today, Degreed. They focus on upskilling workforce and giving micro certifications. They raised 153 million just in April this year, April 15th. That was the announcement. Attensi, I think Attensi's out of Norway. It's a learning and development platform. They raised 26 million, announced on 9th of April this past year. SME Learning, a digital learning platform for executives. They raised 7.5 million. And then Strigo, it's a remote instructor-led on-demand training. They raised 8 million back in, it should say October 2020. So I gave Maria, I like this one. This is a Gary Vaynerchuk, what if and imagine if. So what if Maria reached out to the Degreed or Strigo senior management to be the Greensboro, North Carolina, Raleigh, all that, that area, Charlotte, what if she reached out to them to be the representative for across North Carolina? She has the credentials. She has the experience already doing it with this Canvas, and she's got 2-year certificates. She's done it for 2 years. She's got the certificates. Why not find that out? Why not reach out to these companies? What if she got to lose? And then so that's the what if. And imagine if. Imagine if you became the corporate trainer of the NBA Charlotte Hornets or the Fortune 500 companies, because there are Fortune 500 companies based in, I think, in Raleigh or Charlotte or even Durham. I'm not sure, like Honeywell, Bank of America, or Duke Energy, because they're big organizations. So they probably have a big workforce. And a lot of that you can do virtually. This is pre-COVID. This is post-COVID. So we're already talking about virtual training. She's been doing it for a while, since 2016. So, getting to those, it takes time. But so imagine if you have to do this for a while, but imagine if after 6, 12, 18 months. And my next point is, Maria's had, in my view, very significant experience. So venture capital, again, I've said this, the venture capital portfolio companies represent opportunities. If not working for the venture capital companies themselves, as a trainer, imagine being the trainer for different startups. I never, I didn't put this in there. But if she goes to the venture capital companies and becomes the educator of choice, helping, use new software, onboard new software, if she's got the skill set to help corporate or teachers use some of these, you know, getting teachers to do it's no different than getting executives and other to use different software. So, venture capital comes with a huge opportunity for ed tech, teaching the workforce, retooling, re-educating the workforce using ed tech tools. Potential to teach other teachers. She can do it with the venture capital companies. So, venture capital companies pretty robust in North Carolina. I don't know the population, but there are some pretty cool, innovative companies. Bull City Venture, Durham. No wonder they have the word Durham Bulls. I think it's a baseball team, and there's a movie made on that one. Kevin Costner, the Durham Bulls. CFV Ventures out of Charlotte. Hatteras Venture Partners out of Durham. Now, my earlier with Nisha, that's Hatteras is the healthcare focused. So if Nisha was here in North Carolina, this would be a good source for her. Duke Angel Network out of Durham, Frontier Growth out of Charlotte, Co-Founders Capital out of Cary. I think that's just outside of Raleigh. I can't remember. It's a suburb. Then the NC Venture Capital Fund or North Carolina Venture Capital Fund. I don't exactly, I think they're out of Charlotte or Chapel Hill. Idea Funding Partners, they've got an office in Durham and in Charlotte. And then Papas Capital out of Durham, another healthcare-focused venture capital company. So I just recommend follow the VCs themselves and the VC portfolio company. Follow them on social media. Subscribe to their newsletters. Just get awareness of what they're doing in your space. If they come up with ed tech, they're funding ed tech startups, maybe you can get in there. Consider reaching out to them for advice. How do I, to some of these companies, how do I become a trainer? What would you do for a trainer? Maybe go back to a Clubhouse, invite them to your Clubhouse channel. Probably mentoring her as she wants to, move into the ed tech space. Job openings. Maybe they've got job openings. Maybe she could start as a teacher on the side, weekends, gigs, whatever. So this may look daunting, and this isn't even all of them. These are not all of the ed tech startups. This isn't even complete. This is just the samples that I put together from my funding over the 2-3 years. I just have this was pre-COVID. This list was pre-COVID. And so I sent it, I gave Maria The EdTech innovation that I was aware of, it's rapidly changing. It's constantly changing. This was a list from pre-COVID, but EdTech startups have been around for a while. Um, but I classified two at random, just three, kind of early childhood education from kindergarten up to grade 12, and then the post-secondary adult education. And here you go. It's a dump of companies. Course Hero. If you go to the website today, you'll see they've got 60 million study materials on their site. Unbabble, AI-powered language operations, kind of applicable to her because Maria's a French teacher. Top Hat, all-in-one teacher's platform. So if you're teaching, if she's going to be a trainer or a corporate teacher or teaching people, this could be a good platform to get ideas for how to structure your courses. Bench Prep, online learning focus on digital transformation. So again, non-tech people onboarding. This is a good website to help people, bridge the gap and to prep them for using digital tools. RID, AI to assess and predict learning capacity. So it's kind of cool because you just put in your credentials and it kind of spits back what you need to learn. I think it assesses your capacity. Foundry College, online professional skills courses for retooling people. I mean, they're mid-career. Go One, workforce training platform, SMEs, corporations. And then Skillshare. Skillshare is really, really cool. And this is some practical courses, animation, design, photo and film, business, just learning about business, and then writing, how to write. And so there's some real practical courses on Skillshare. And looking into kindergarten to post-secondary or grade 12, K to 12. Outschool, interactive classes for ages 3 to 18. Hopster, early years learning for real young, 3 to 5. Red Shelf, a source of digital textbooks. Photomath. My daughter was using something in grade 10. You just basically take a picture of the problem and it solves it for you. I think it's a real useful tool, especially if you're studying late at night and the answer key doesn't help. I think it's a very useful tool. Winnie, for education for providers to daycare and other. I mean, I think it's oh yeah, because the daycare, there's the daycare, preschool, childcare. So I repeated it because I put it down over there. And then Roibu. Roibu's like this little doll, little toy doll, like it's kind of a whatever, and it's interactive with the children. And Roibu, the founder, one of the founders, was recently was on Start Engine. I saw one of the podcasts, the demo day, and Start Engine. If people don't know, that's Kevin O'Leary, who's part of the Shark Tank, and they presented to Kevin O'Leary. That was about 3-4 months ago. And then Kangaroo Time, geared for early childhood education. If you've got a business and you're teaching children early childhood, 3-5 years old, 3-4-5 years old, that level, it gives you the tools to help you do that. So again, if Maria is going to set up her own shop, if she decided to be an entrepreneur in this space, these kind of companies, they provide tools to help you if this is your business. I gave a lot. I put a lot out there for Maria, and the Clubhouse chat room. Back to the Gary Vaynerchuk applying the Clubhouse. How does it apply to job search? How does a chat room? How does Clubhouse apply to job search? I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Tanisha Cherry was a guest on my podcast back in February this year, and she does a welcome to Clubhouse. She's a LinkedIn, she's an influencer, social media influencer. She does a Clubhouse channel, or she does a YouTube where she teaches people how to use Clubhouse. And she also has her own chat room with LinkedIn influencers, digital marketing people. My suggestion is back to that Gary Vaynerchuk using the high school party concept. Invite teachers and educators from across North Carolina to talk about all things education, COVID, online pivoted, EdTech tools. Some of the ones I've mentioned, some of the ones she's familiar with. What curriculum changes have they had to make? How have they managed, adapted being online, offline? How has that impacted the kids' grades? How was that impacting the graduation ceremonies of some of the older children? And there was a wonderful podcast by Andreessen Horowitz last August. and it was called Online Learning and EdTech, the EdTech debate. There were some executives from Harvard, Stanford. I mean, real thoughtful discussion, real robust dialogue that could give some food for thought to her EdTech chat room. And then maybe invite some of her former students on stage, talk about the future of learning, talk about their social interaction. How has it changed now that they've got to do online learning or have done it online, and their future careers? How does it impact them? And then Clubhouse. How does this, I've said this before, how does Clubhouse link to job search, or how does Clubhouse link to becoming an ed tech instructor? This is back to the what if and imagine if. Imagine the discussions. So the what if is, what if she formed a chat room and brought all these people on? And imagine the discussions Maria will have with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, the administrators there, or corporate executives after she runs this. Imagine after 6, 12, 18 months, she runs these thought leader sessions. Imagine the discussions she will have, no matter who she's talking to, recruiters, HR managers. It'd be a much different discussion by not doing it. So I just gave this 2 months ago. What else can I add? Back in May, I thought I gave her everything. I basically let it all out, dropped it all on the table. The ed tech, this space is constantly evolving and changing. Recently, the Chinese government has cracked down on ed tech. Publicly listed companies said, that's it. You're no longer public. You have to shift from being profit oriented to nonprofit. They're basically shut down. It's a tech crackdown, but it's a crackdown that's really impacted the ed tech space. So it's just something that's happened in the last couple of weeks. So it's just, to be aware of this, be familiar. Articulate. I don't know how to articulate this any better than to say they received $1.5 billion recently in funding for its learning and development program. And they're targeting the corporate, the EdTech space. 50% is EdTech educators, and the other half is the corporate, corporate businesses and running online training programs. 1.5 billion. I mean, maybe Maria could reach out to them and become a trainer for them. And then the Duolingo IPO. I mentioned Duolingo earlier. They recently did the on equity, the TechCrunch equity podcast talked about the Duolingo IPO. I don't know if Duolingo's gone to the IPO yet, but this is rapidly changing, because before I just thought it was a cool podcast with the founder of Duolingo. Now they're going IPO, public listing on stock exchange, I think New York Stock Exchange. But in the episode, they also talked about 5 edtech startups that have raised significant money: Solo Learn, Numerade, New Campus, and Mural. And I'll talk about those in a second. So this was just aired 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Again, EdTech debate. EdTech focus has been pretty robust the last couple of years, as you've seen some of the EdTech funding announcements. But the equity, Natasha Mascarenhas focuses on the EdTech space, so she often does a lot of the articles. But on the podcast, she always talks about the EdTech. Once in a while, we'll chime in on EdTech. So let's look at, since I gave Maria the advice or career guidance or whatever it was back in May, there's some new funding announcements just here in July. So these four were notable. They're very notable because, one, the money that they raised, but two, some of the things they're doing. So on July 20th, seems to be everybody announces at the same time. That doesn't necessarily mean when they receive the funding. But anyway, Solo Learn, they raised $24 million for its mobile first coding education app, bite-sized, Duolingo-like. So basically, allowing people to learn in chunks, not having to go sit in a course. Duolingo, like, I mean, I've learned the Russian language. I learned a little bit of Arabic using some of these language apps, and they're very effective. You just short, and particularly for coding, if it's focused on coding, very important on that space, the tech space. But if they're bite-sized, as Natasha Mascarenhas mentioned during the podcast, that they're just really helpful for learning, and you can look at them anytime on your phone. And because it's on your phone, you can go to them anytime. In fact, I learned about the Hyperledger blockchain, and through that, it was called I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, I learned about that blockchain just through my phone, and it was great at lunchtime or whenever. I could just spend 15 minutes and listening to and the nuances of their blockchain. I think it was called edX. So Enumerate raised 100 million for its EdTech tutoring platform. It's subscription for short-term STEM videos. So kind of like that short form or bite-sized uh, learning for the coding. This is short-term tutoring for tech and STEM around STEM, a tech tutoring platform around so the science, technology, education, engineering, and math. New campus raised 2.5 million, a lot, right? Because it's a new startup to train workforces in Southeast Asia. Their focus is to train mid-level managers on tech giants. So they mentioned Southeast Asia. India could be a big one because of the China crackdown. Because of the China crackdown on EdTech, this such a platform could be very valuable for companies like India, because for companies that are focused on India, because it's a big population. India and China are about the same population base, but if you can't go in and advertise or work on in the Chinese platform, can't work there, India might be a good option. But anyway, new campus, train workforces in Southeast Asia. And then the last one's Mural. They raised 50 million, good chunk of money, for its digital whiteboard. So it's like helping train. So Maria wants to be a trainer, a digital whiteboard to help the workforce. So for remote learning. And I literally didn't check on how it works. You could download the demo, but it's a whiteboard to allow for communications across on the Zoom calls and so forth. So that's it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I want to conclude here because, this is, you know, what's demonstrated here, key points is the rapidly changing tech landscape. EdTech, the suggestions changed from May, not even 3 months ago. It provided me a ton of opportunity to update. I just literally posted those advice. But how does any job seeker, whether it's EdTech or health tech, how does any individual, for that matter, how do they navigate through and keeping track of all of these such changes? Recently, I posed this question to Tessa May Marr from Marr Media Group, and she was on my podcast, episode number 302 of the Calgary Business Podcast. And I asked Tessa to share with my listeners, how does her team, Marr Media Group, how do they keep up with such changes in their marketing and social media business? Tessa provided this practical piece of advice. I asked my staff to remain curious and open-minded to such innovation. I asked them to learn enough to see if there is any relevancy to adopt, either for us in our business or for our clients to adopt in their businesses. Now, this is paraphrased somewhat from my podcast, but I think you can appreciate the intent. And the other thing I want to note is the health tech and ed tech importance. The COVID pandemic has highlighted the importance of both health tech and ed tech in our day-to-day lives. The rapidly changing tech environment probably will not impact either of them in their day-to-day work. But I think it's a good idea for each of them, Maria and Nisha, to become familiar with the latest SaaS and technology innovation that is applicable to their current job function or in their sphere in the health tech, ed tech space, such that they can understand potential ways that perhaps they could adopt with their current employer, with their customers that they interact with, or on patients or not, but patients at the healthcare facility. Or if anything, it'll improve the level of discussions should either of them find themselves in a position where they have to hit the job where they have to hit the pavement for seeking jobs, and they have those conversations on the job interview. So next time when I'm asked, will you review my CV? Absolutely. Just be prepared to grab a pen and paper. You are going to need to take a lot of notes. Have a great day and stay safe.